Do you want to connect with clinicians, partners, investors, and experts who can speed up your scale up in health tech? Our hands-on mentorship, guidance, and the program's suite of benefits can help you navigate the path to commercialization like the insider you'll soon be. To apply to be a Rosenman Innovator, go to rosenmaninstitute.org. Applications are open through April 12th. And now, from San Francisco and the UCSF Rosenman Institute, the Health Technology Podcast with your host, Christine Winoto.
Our guest today is Julia Hu. Julia is the co-founder and CEO of Lark Health, a digital nursing platform that helps with the daily management of chronic conditions such as diabetes and hypertension. Lark Health uses a text-based interface to connect members with an AI nurse. In this episode, Julia shares how her own experiences with a chronic condition have shaped her approach to healthcare. She believes in compassionate care for the whole person. Julia also shares her insight on how to continue to grow as an executive alongside a growing company. Here's our conversation. Welcome, Julia. Thanks for joining me this morning. What a good way to start the new year with having a conversation with you. So very excited to have you on our podcast. And I thought it would be good to start with a little bit about your background. You have done so much in a short period of your lifetime. And I'd like to maybe share with our listeners about where that passion came from and how do you keep on delivering.
Happy New Year, Christine. It's great to be here. You know, I have so much passion for healthcare, not because I have been in healthcare all my life. In fact, I was doing startups in clean tech before, but I have spent really close to the last 9 years of my career really focused on how do you help people live happier, healthier lives, and doing that with technology. And, you know, I've lived with a chronic condition all my life. And, you know, my dad had to quit his day job to take care of me. And, you know, it was really tough on him. He looked for 30 or so specialists and couldn't find a person that could tell me what I had. And so without that diagnosis, he ended up finding a pediatrician who became sort of like an uncle. The Dr. Peng worked with me and my dad every week for close to 12 years. And though he didn't know my condition exactly, completely changed my diet and how I manage pain and stress and emotions and exercise and sleep. And through that, got rid of 95% of my attacks. And
so is this something that you went through at the first 12 years of your life or the last 12 years of your life?
It's pretty much all growing up, the first, 12 years of my life. It's still how I manage my chronic condition, but it was really this idea of this, compassionate 24/7 care team, my dad and my pediatrician, that really inspired me to see if we could do things a little bit more scalably to provide this experience to anyone struggling from chronic disease. And there are so many people in the world struggling with a chronic condition.
If I may ask, like, what that condition, did you find out? Did you finally figure out what it is? And does it help with managing it even better?
Yeah. It's still a constant journey. So we did figure out that it was a pretty specific type of gallbladder sphincter condition. But even today, I am still figuring out, I've had several surgeries, I'm still figuring out if there's autoimmune issues connected to it. So for me, at the end of the day, even after my surgeries, I relapsed into attacks. And it really was my learnings from my childhood and that, kind of counseling that I continually got that is how I managed my condition today. So, in trying to build Lark, we wanted to build an infinitely scalable version of that experience, a very personal, compassionate experience where we could look at the data and the situation of the patient, and then really provide a caring support network to it.
So before you started Lark, based on your experience, and you did mention you started something in a clean tech. So obviously that was not really in healthcare, but still a good quality of life for the society. And so obviously you're drawn to the entrepreneurship part. And how does that came about? Where do you get that inspiration from?
So I would credit that to my days at Stanford. Stanford was just such a great environment where they really promoted entrepreneurship, innovation. They really, a lot of professors kind of instilled in us a responsibility of changing society for the better. And so I would go over to the business school and volunteer to be, an intern for all of the business school kids. I interned for probably 7 or 8 startups when I was at Stanford, doing everything: financial modeling, product design, marketing. Really got a sense of what I liked, what I didn't like, and just really fell in love with the idea of bringing something new to the world.
It's kind of a good training ground to see a lot of different piece of how the company is operating.
Yeah, exactly.
And get paid for it, I hope, while you're interning.
Well, a lot of these were, unpaid internships. You got some trips and competitions out of it. So, but it was it was a great time. I got to learn and really just be involved in this great energy. So I love that.
Well, that's good. So you started a clean tech company, and what from you said, I think I'm done in this space and let me explore the healthcare world?
Well, I really loved the idea of building something tangible and seeing it through. And when I was doing clean tech, a lot of the work was, I would say, on a 5 to 10 year horizon. And I said, well, I want to do something that I can get out there and launch in less than 10 years. Little did I know that healthcare was so complicated, and I probably jumped into the other most highly regulated industry. But that was sort of the interest that sparked, well, what other big problems can I solve? And at the time, I started getting more relapses with my condition, and so started thinking about, well, I know that this is something that is important to me. Maybe it's important to other people like me. And so then I started just reading into the, chronic condition space. And it's shocking to see that our healthcare system is so perfectly built for infectious diseases, for acute issues, but it's not really set up as an industry for chronic conditions. And as a result, chronic conditions are really managed, with a combination of yourself reading, Wikipedia and the internet and WebMD, and your parents or your kids telling you what they heard from a friend. And so, I think that is really why we have this chronic disease epidemic, where 86% of all healthcare costs are really spent in chronic disease management.
Yeah. I think I was thinking about as you said that, I think in really long time ago, when disease don't get treatment, so become acute. And so now we have more technology, we have more therapeutic that allow people to have a chronic condition. But then I think the healthcare has not caught up.
Yeah.
in that way, I
Exactly.
think. And
Exactly. And there's just not enough doctors and nurses in the world to take care of all these chronic patients. There's more than 1 billion chronic patients in the world. And because there's not enough doctors and nurses, it's why we felt there was a real opportunity to use technology to try and create an AI nurse that felt personal and compassionate.
what I found is interesting when I was reading a little bit about the history of Lark is that when you first started, it was very different from what Lark is. So maybe you can tell us a little bit what Lark is, what it does, and then tell us like why do you pivot? And even before you pivot, you accomplished quite a bit with that original idea. So I just thought it was interesting. And how do you decide, like, you know what, this is the right move, even though we've done well, let's move away and go a different direction.
I love it. I know everyone calls it a pivot, and I call it an evolution.
I love that.
But so Lark is an AI healthcare provider. We manage close to 2 million patients and their chronic conditions through what looks like a unlimited text message based counseling chat. So you're chatting with your AI nurse who is coaching you on how to manage your diabetes, your prediabetes, your hypertension, your behavioral health issues. And so it's really pulling in a ton of data from your glucometers, medical devices, and just chatting with you at 1 a.m. at night when you're stressing and need a little bit of help, or you want to eat healthier for your condition and you don't know what quite to eat. So it's really helping you with the daily management and improvement of your chronic condition. And so that is quite different from how we started, which was a hardware and software service, which was a health monitor. It was a sleep monitor and an app that coached you on sleeping better. But if you look at the premise, it's actually very similar. We had a health monitor that tied to an AI coach who was focused on coaching you on how to sleep better. The way that we entered into the space was actually more as a consumer service. We sold our monitor, and it was also a silent alarm clock to in all Apple stores globally, and we were scaling as a hardware software service, doing AI sleep coaching. We did decide to pivot, or evolve into the AI layer on top of all of these devices, not just our own, because we saw this huge blossoming of, connected health monitors, and we wanted to be the counseling coaching layer on top of all of these services. Healthcare monitors. It was, that's sort of the high level, maybe, more polished view. I didn't realize that we really were going for a pivot because we changed how we got paid. We changed the composition of the team, which led to, a lot of heartbreak, and we had to let go of our hardware team. It really then pulled us back into R&D for another 5-6 years. It took us about 5 years to get clinical equivalents to live nurses. And so it was just a ton of R&D building this AI nurse with a bunch of technologists and AI technologists to replace a live nurse. And that period was, it was very, very difficult. We luckily had some very supportive and long-term investors who believed in us and believed that this was a mission that was worthy of patients. And we had teammates that, really were willing to stick it out and really be in R&D without a revenue, path, and even like just blind faith that we could build an AI nurse that could replace a live nurse.
Yeah.
It was just years and years. So I learned a lot there. It was a struggle and many times, but also fun.
Yeah. Now, bring me back to your team thinking, because, you said your product was sold in all Apple Store. That's huge. It's almost like when you're at that stage, why not continue, the projections that you guys are going and expand towards that direction, that now that you have the buy-in from Apple Store, why completely change? Did something momentous happen that just like, what, this is the way to do it? Something. Yeah.
No, it's a great question. Sometimes I think I'm a little crazy to rip it apart when it was just going and scaling. A couple of reasons. One was I really believe that startups need maniacal focus, and you have to know that with your current resources at hand, you have to really, really cut down on where you want to be excellent. And it was really hard to be excellent in both hardware and software. As a startup, the choices that you make in the very beginning really lay out where you're going to win in the future. And for us, we felt our resources really pulled. I spent most of my time, in China, working on supply chain. And we weren't able to focus more deeply on where I cared about the business, which is how do you use AI and conversational AI? So how do you create a really engaging experience that changes behavior? And so that was my background at school. It was really the behavior change, product that I really wanted to build out with my team. And here we were really being pulled into the nitty-gritty of hardware. Secondly, we wanted to partner with hardware companies, and they really saw us as a competitor. So it really, we felt like we need a radical signal to say, hey, work with us because we're here to help, to help coach people with this data that you're providing. So it was a tough decision. I remember with my wonderful board member and advisor, Wei-Li Dai, who built. She's known as she's the richest self-made Asian female entrepreneur in the U.S. and she's a great long-term visionary. And she just said, you should focus on your AI counseling and the behavior change. So it was a tough decision, I really didn't know how difficult it would be.
But you did it, you pulled it through. And I noticed that, so I was just thinking about, you guys managed to bring your product to Apple Store and also having later on Lark app to be pre-installed in Samsung. So you've made all these inroads that in the tough areas. So my question, like, what is the secret sauce? How do you that make it happen? And I'm sure there's a lot of people. I feel like app, it seems like, everybody always say, everybody can build an app, but, to be adopted in something like this, what does it take?
Well, I thank you for those kind words. I mean, I still feel like we're, always, behind and we need to be further along. But I think a lot of it is stubbornness. I don't know. I mean, folks call it grit or perseverance. I think this level of stubbornness, I think, is really important, that you care so deeply about a problem and you just believe that this is the way to solve that problem. And you're just going to do whatever it takes to solve that problem.
This podcast is sponsored by Brown Rudnick's Global Life Sciences Group, a team of legal professionals that help life science companies, lenders, and investors around the world turn good science into good business. Learn more at brownrudnick.com. This podcast is also sponsored by Canon Quality Group. Canon Quality Group has been helping medtech startups set up quality management systems for over 10 years. If you're unsure when to get started with quality management in your startup, turn to the experts at canonqualitygroup.com.
For me, I really wanted to sort of share the love and compassion that I felt from my dad, from my Dr. Peng, and I really wanted that to be infused in everything we do. And so we really tried to bring people together that had a shared value system. We we just hustled. Like we tried to get it in front of people that we thought would be attracted by that mission.
How many doors did you have to knock before you finally get?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, there's like, I just laugh at our investors in the very beginning. When you say, I'm going to build an AI nurse to replace a live nurse. And I don't know how many doors got slammed shut on me. Hundreds.
Yeah. So going back to even for the Samsung, I think that's a huge accomplishment, right? Like a young company to get preloaded on a Samsung phone. Can you walk us through what's the steps that, how you get there, how tough that is?
I laughed because I think I looked at my Rolodex and I ended up having around 200 different people that I chatted with at Samsung, and up to it was quite interesting. Today some of those folks are actually the president of Samsung Electronics, and they've also advanced in their careers. I mean, sometimes you do things that you don't quite know. I just had another 2 conversations and meetings with these guys. You don't quite know the value of that, but I would say that through those 200 different people, I found, multiple groups that were aligned with what we wanted to do, and, lots of trips to Korea, and we got there. We were, I think it helped that we were at the beginning of this digital health sort of movement, where before us, there was a lot of, I would say, more wellness services. And we were really pushing the boundary of how do you take, clinical best-in-class protocols and turn it into this conversation. And so I think we were lucky that we were at the beginning of conversational AI, having sort of that chatbot experience. We were lucky in that we were at the beginning of capturing all of this data from 70 devices and pulling it and making meaning out of all of this data, not just one stream at a time, but holistically. And I think because of those pieces, and some of my stubbornness, I think we were able to get it to the right folks, because we were able to show that we had, won a lot of innovation awards, that we were able to train our AI on about 1 million patients. So we kept on getting smarter, and it was the combination of that. So, you said, what's the secret sauce? I mean, I have, I said the stubbornness, but honestly, that's just a little bit on top. The real secret sauce, of course, is building the right team, and really focusing on technology and product market fit.
it's almost like everything has to happen around the same time, right? You have to have a lot of the there. So when you meet the right people, you have something to offer.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody was I was trying to explain to people about, the healthcare entrepreneurs, like you move like an octopus. Everything has to move. You can't just move one leg. There's so many legs that have to move somehow. And once in a while you move one leg too much, then you just propel you.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I know. Sometimes I feel a little schizophrenic. I do. Yeah.
So that's great. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I also noticed that one thing, I don't know whether you have this experience. I've heard people who are life partners starting a company together. And some investors shy away from investing in a couple. And some investors don't. I always tell people like, it's hard to find Goldilocks. Some people don't mind, some people do. But if you could share with us a little bit about your experience.
Sure. So my co-founder is my husband, and I would even say so much that you as a founder really should consider whether you want to put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak, and really become life partners and business partners. For us, we had a little bit of a different experience. I've been with my husband for close to 20 years. And he and I actually met
in high school
on the National Science Bowl team. And we competed together. So we were first teammates, and then we started dating afterwards. And so we knew that we were very good as teammates in these intense competitions. And so I felt that we could be good company co-founders, but we always made it very clear. He said, "You are the CEO. If I'm not working out for you, I rather you give me really strong feedback and fire me. And, let's just keep our marriage as, at the time it was, our relationship as, the part that we don't screw up." And so I think that just open, honest, continuous conversation, I think, is critical. And that's between you and your partner. The additional factor is that it does make investors more concerned. And so it's just another layer. It's another hurdle that you have to get through. And that's I guess that's part of the part of the calculation.
Yeah. So do you think now as the company has grown and has delivered, you feel like that aspect is kind of more or less a moot point at this point?
Yes, I do. I couldn't think of a better co-founder because we are so good at practice. I mean, we spent a lot of time. We actually hired in an executive coach to coach us in how to communicate with each other on intense business pieces. And so I think that we've gotten a lot of that value. And, luckily now that the company is further along, we've raised close to $100 million. So I think we're just at a place where it's not as much of an issue anymore.
Yeah, well, that's great. It was great that you're continuously growing, with times, with the company growth. You're young, the company's young, but the company's growing really fast. And what advice do you give for an early stage entrepreneur? Because many of them, they found a company. Some just want to find a company and then deliver it to experienced CEO to execute. And some do want to continue to grow their mission and their vision. But what kind of skill set they need to, because they also need to grow their skill set, like, what they start and further with what they need later in the company's life is different. What suggestion, advice do you have for them?
Absolutely. I think that the advice that I would give is that, well, two
get a
pieces.
Coach.
Yeah. Well, yeah, actually get a coach is a great way of growing yourself. I think that the only thing that you can be assured of in a startup is that there's constant change. And so really being growth oriented and listening to a variety of people you really respect, whether that be advisors or teammates or mentors or VCs, really just listening to a variety of opinions before you make your own. But trust in your own, decision. So I would say that it's really critical to always have that growth mindset. Just know that even if you don't think that you are the best person for the job, you are in fact the best person for the job because you are the one doing it. And so don't shortchange yourself and just trust in yourself that at this moment in time that you're going to do your best and that it's good enough. So I would say, really continue to change your opinions as you scale, because each phase of the company really, really depends on you changing into another type of leader. So I respect people that then just give it off to a more senior executive as well, because they think that they cannot change quickly enough to adapt to that next phase. And that's also a self-recognition. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think self-recognition is important. And then knowing what you need to do next after you understand about who you are. We all have, it's always good to take a moment to reflect on that, no matter in business or in life, I think. So, no, this is great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your stories and your passion. And I'm glad that you're well, and I'm glad that you share the knowledge that you have in managing your chronic condition and allowing more people to have access to a more compassionate process of managing your chronic disease.
Thank you so much, Christine. And thank you for, sharing everyone's personal stories. So it's a great community that you're building.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Health Technology Podcast. We want to thank our executive producer, Herminio Neto, our content writer, Kelly Muscat, and our podcast engineer, Andrew Rojek. If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. The Health Technology Podcast is available on all major platforms.